In the brain of the man, we have a structure like this, where the emotion sits here in the middle, and then you have the full brain on two halves here. This is a crude way of showing it, but that's more or less what it is. What does this do? Up to now, everything we have taught has been about this: the physicality and the control of the neural system of the physicality of the body. In space and space technology, the only thing more or less you're concerned about is this. The rest, what we had here, is irrelevant. This opens up totally different new structure in the whole of the health business in the space. If we take this section of the brain of the man, we call it section 1, then we have to understand its work. This is part of the main brain of the body of the man. So what does this do? We have to understand, this is we already have taught partially in the private teachings. We are looking at the section 1. This is your section 1. We draw it cruelly that you can understand. Your emotion is here. This is your emotion. It's all gravitational magnetically field controlled. You have another part to this, which is your, let's say, fear. You have another part to it that is your joy. You have another part to it that is your sexual behavior, emotional reproduction. Now we go into the physical structure of the brain, and in fact, because here there is no physical movement, because the other part of the brain was to do with your arm, with your leg, with every single piece of your body. But the central part of the brain is to do with the operation of life of a man. And in space you'll find out that this chap here, if we can call him a chap here, can be interfered very easily by a space plasma. Your emotion here, if it interacts, let's say, in a certain condition with another field, here you get depression. You never touched anything. But the field which comes from the plasma of the universe, which has managed to cross the boundary of your craft, if it is tuned with this section, let's say, it can give you fear or depression. If it comes and is at the given state of the strength and interacts with this part, can, let's say, give you joy. Can give you happiness in another section, in another strength. Because up to now the world of science have not understood that emotions are gravitational magnetic field strength, which happens within the structure of the inner brain of the man. And this will become the most important part of the body of the man to protect in the space. The rest of the physicality is a consequence of what happens in this part. Intelligence is part of this structure. This part, where we call the main brain, the main part of the structure of the brain, is the control of everything, and if it's not protected in space, can create mayhem. Let me tell you one thing which is very interesting. It has happened in space and will happen in space very rapidly if we do not understand it, for those of you who are working on it now. If, let's say, a field enters your body and touches, let's say, the section which the strength magnetic gravitational field is a fear. And this part of the fear, in this section of this part of the brain, decides, I am afraid, blah, blah, whatever. I dictate to the arm to dislocate itself, cut itself off, that I can survive. A misinformation. And we have seen it like in ILS, like in MS. Information goes for paralysis, and then information goes for total amputation by itself. It's like a skin. You find out you lose your arm for nothing. You have an arm, you don't have an arm next second. The same is with every other aspects. This is what the present world of medicine has no clue about. And this is where 80% of your work in health, operation in space has to concentrate on. Different ball game, different structure, different gravitational and magnetic fields. So in this process, in this level of teaching, when we enter the space technology defense, it is not for you to protect your craft, it's mainly how not to allow a given strength which is fully available. It's like a, what I call bread and butter of a space magnetic field strength, is that this section never gets tampered with. Fields do not enter this zone that you go into a depression. Then you go in the overdrive that the brain, without knowing it, releases information into the physical part and it starts seizures and epileptic attacks. Because if this section receives the information which can be carried to the physicality and is too much, then the valve in the back of the head will stop working, shuts itself down, too much information, you go into a forever epileptic attack. So the new health space technology is something you have never been aware of, but you have to become aware of, because your life will depend on it. I have touched on this in one of the private teachings on the Wednesdays in past 2 or 3 weeks. Now we have to understand it. It's the responsibility of those who work in the health section of the Keshe Foundation and in the future coming to do, is to understand this operation. Because if you understand this operation, if you understand the strength of each layer, because your fear is not something imaginary. A given strength, gravitational magnetic field, is translated by our emotion as fear. A given strength received by the emotion, we call it joy. Another one we call whatever. And the emotions all controlled in this section, because they do not need physicality. They only need information, gravitational magnetic field strength. And these are created by interaction of the fields which goes across. And then we see the reaction. If you have a fear in this section, the certain gravitational magnetic field strength is called the fear strength. Then you cuddle yourself physically, you hide in the hole somewhere, and the rest of it. Or you cringe because you're afraid they might do something to me. Every level in the human body, now we have to go in the plasmatic magnetic field strength direction. No more trying to give an arm moving or getting a leg moving or creating or solving the cancer, a condition that we can overcome cancer. More human race will die by interference of the fields in this section, more or less than anything else. Because a field from the space enters the zone, which is of the strength of something. It gives you a feeling of safety, it's comfortable, and you just walk into something which is a wall or a hole, or you land up in a planet that you don't even can exist, you'll be dissolved. So when we speak about the space defense technology, we talk about partially this, to make sure that no fields at no circumstances can reach the central brain system. At the same time, no field can reach neurosystem that through a spinal cord, or the interaction of the fields even with the organs or the skin of the man, and information strength, the strength of fear in the brain part of the body, which is to do with emotion, can be created. Because The body of the man is in a gans state, is not in a matter state that we have led to believe. And always say, if you understand this, then you can create a condition. You all have seen in the teachings going back 2 years ago from the Sansana and before, I always explain about happy systems, sad systems, cheeky systems. Because the energy they receive and they emit is at the strength to us is that. We've seen our Chinese scientists reporting where the magnetic systems are working, they call it the happy room. They are happy whenever you go into the room. Because the gravitational magnetic field created in the stacker unit at a given strength is the strength of the happy section of the emotion of the body of our Chinese colleagues and friends. So the defense technology in the space in respect to the knowledge of man, medical, is beyond your understanding and imagination. You cannot even, could even our doctors and scientists cannot even imagine what was happening, and they were looking for where the body is happy or whatever it is. All our emotions, anything to do with non-physical interaction and the reaction sits just underneath the two hard frames of the body of the man in the brain, where we see like a shoe horse, so two half shoes. These two half shoes, what I call horseshoes or whatever you want to call it, these are where the fields of the emotion are allowed to translate into the physical reaction. That's why they are there. So those of you who come into the medical application of the space technology, you are already in the full, should be in the full understanding of the motion of your craft, defense of the craft in respect to the fields, and even what you call, what we call emotional viruses. What does this mean? It means a gravitational magnetic field package will enter the craft which can interact only with the emotional part, which is a protein based, and then what happens to you? You have a brain virus which is connected only to your emotion. And how would it develop? A virus is when a package of energy attaches himself to amino acid, be it by the strength of one of the four elements, or a combination of them, or a totality of them. It just needs to have something at a given strength that it can attach itself to. Create gravitational magnetic field connection. So when we start speaking about space, true space health, it has nothing to do with what you have done, we have done in all the teachings. Space medicine, space health has to be understood the way the health of a passenger, what we call motions, understand, can help to survive any condition anywhere in space. Does not bear any resemblance to what we have taught as the health section in the health part of the development of the technology or the systems which you are building or the pens. Very much like AIDS that kills so much or other viruses, space health in the virus level to the link to the strength of the emotions of the man, it'll be a more deadlier problem than anything man has ever could imagine. These are energy packs which are at the strength of your happiness. Because they are at that strength, when they come to your brain and they can link up to the amino acid of the brain which is responsible to detect that strength, now you have a virus. And these viruses can be horrendous. In a way, Maybe we can explain it. They say if you eat too much such a thing, it makes you laugh, you can't stop laughing. You literally can die from the virus, which brings you to laughter and happiness that you have no control. Maybe we call it this state of ecstasy. Space medicine, space health is literally nothing to do, more or less, with 90% of what we've been taught on a medical and health application up to now, even in the Keshe Foundation, as we brought you to understand the totality of the how things are. So we see why we have to, and we are in a way ready for accepting the space defense technology. We have to be able to defend ourselves not against missiles or whatever, but we have to be able to be in position that we can protect ourselves against these kind of things. It's a must. It's the reality that if you thought, as I said, you were happy with one Magraph system, you still got a long way to go to understand. We are guiding a team, a group, to start building new type of spaceship reactors and systems. And the team is already getting a small touches of what is to come. We cannot and we should not be eluded by that. We have understood, now we are ready to do the space system, we are ready to make health systems. These health systems, except the one we have seen in recent past, partially, which was shown by Innovation Center in Philippines, will be more or less good enough for the man on Earth. A pen in space has no meaning, because if you understood the work and how it's connected to your neurosystem, you go directly to the emotional part where and the strength is given, is shown or understood to be pain. You don't go to take a tablet to sort the problem. You go to the point why it is, the way it is, what the strength is. You have to learn a very simple language of science of space. And that is, everything is placed on the plasma and everything has a strength. Be it magnetical or gravitational, or what we call maggrav strengths. One strength at a given maggrav, gravitational and magnetical, we call pain. Another one we call joy. Another one we call fear, and so forth. It's impossible to say joy is something else than pain. No, our brain has been fixed to recognize certain gravitational magnetic field as pain. That's how we associate with it. And it's got nothing to do with the physical part of the brain of the man. Physically, it's not nothing to do with it. What does this mean? It means you do not feel pain because something has gone into your foot. You can walk for weeks with something in your foot you don't realize, until it creates a given strength in your body that says this is pain. This is how cancer takes hold in the life of the man. This is how it's so painful to have a cancer, but is not detected because the strength of the pain of the opening of a cell in a certain position cavity, which is exactly like putting a pin in your foot, is equal to what man already knows. And by the time when it becomes so big that it releases a field as a total mass in the strength equal to pain, then we say, oh, I have a pain in my or chest, and by the time you get it done, oh, it's a big lump of 7 centimeter and it's a cancer. In fact, the entity has already created a certain gravitational magnetic field which is within the spectrum of our feeling safe, and by the time it shows the first sign trying to push something which should not be pushed, we feel a pain, we go to the doctor. Excuse me, sir, you got the cancer 5 centimeters by 8 centimeters. It didn't grow overnight. It took months to grow, but it did not create the right strength that the human brain, in the emotional part of the brain, which is the controller of total body, could not recognize. So, do we need even to go through systems which need to reverse cancer? Or do we start the understanding operation of the center part of the brain of the man, and we control everything from there without no medicine? This is what the space medicine is about. There are no pharmaceuticals and there'll be no tablets or chemotherapy. It's finding the information, the way it has come, that we recognize it in the emotional part of the brain, and then we can give the same knowledge back to the physical part, that this thing here should not be. You create the right energy for it, and within a matter of seconds, the body decides there's a foreign part there, we have to dissolve it, whatever is done, you reverse cancer within minutes. This is what I explained before, and this is what the first helmets which we've seen developed by Innovation Center in Philippines is heading us to that direction. So this is not something which is just come out of the hat. This is something which I prepared you gradually to get there, that when it comes to it, you understand it. Do we need huge operations, or do we need to understand a very small part of the structure of the man in the brain to be able to do everything without any operation? And this is what we have to do. The health game, now that a lot of you are testing with different reactors, with different combination of fuels, with different structure and coils and cores and God knows everything else, we are heading for. We go from the full structure of the man with kilos of meat and flesh and whatever and blood, to one center point, in the center of the heart of the whole operation. And if you go back from the health teachings from the very beginning, very first lessons, we started the teaching of the health. I kept on emphasizing that when the time is right, like today, we can introduce the new dimension. We always kept, and I kept on teaching about the emotion. You have a blood, the emotion part of it. We spoke about the kidney, we spoke what's got to do with the physical part, what's got to do with the emotional part. Because now that we come to the maturity of understanding most of the work of the plasma, we can bring the knowledge in. And now most of us can understand. So in space and space technology, you have two responsibilities. One is to be able to even feed the emotional part with the energy packages that can tell the rest of the physical part, I'm receiving everything I have, and you can have whatever you like, and there is no need for food. In fact, the somatic part of the body of the man becomes irrelevant, and as I always said, go back to very first teachings, I always said, the physical part of the body of the man is a leech which has attached itself to the emotional part. And the two have compromised in so many ways that I can give you how to feel through the emotional part. You take me around where I can receive oxygen or energy or nitrogen or whatever, that I can have the control of my own existence. Division is very clear. Below, just about your heart and lung, is your physical connection. Your lung and your heart is your emotional connection. The two have separated themselves fully. Now, if you can make a system that can feed more higher energy impacts, like your lung conversion system and your heart feeding system, to give the energy directly to the emotional part, you do not need the digestion system. You do not need to get cancer, because 90% of our cancer comes through our physical part of our life. Even when you get the lung cancer, is a physical part of the lung which fails, that it ends up with the demise of the man on both ends, the emotional and physical. So as of today, as we said, this year we are ready to take man into space. Now we teach the true space technology, the true understanding of what it means to live in space without the need to be within the structure of the physicality of the planet, any planet. Because now the universe is the oyster of life for man. Because now we have to understand, we have to be able, through a plasma technology, the systems very much, at least initially, what we have seen developed in Philippines by the Innovation Center, and I see others are copying it, should be used. You don't feed the body of the man. You satisfy the emotion with the energy which can feed itself to the physicality, and man can exist. This is the time we see the growth of the man out of the shell of physicality, when you start changing the structure of the physicality, that it means 2 of the 5 fingers and toes are not needed, because these are the physical connections. We only will end up with 3 fingers and 3 literally toes, which carry partially connection and holding on to the emotion, that the physicality can exist. And when we saw the first videos and go back, what we saw with the situation in Canada with Ali, where we saw the fingers getting elongated or fingers not to be seen, you can see the attachment of the man to physicality or his control through emotion. Now with these systems which you see coming up in what we call star formation, and in the dynamic star formation where the coil creates its own condition in the center, we'll find people feel happy. People will walk away blind and come into the system absolutely, they can see everything. Because even the sight has a strength which, if you can achieve it and create it, you do not need the eye to see the physical eye. The space technology of what is to come and what we start teaching from now on brings man to a totally new dimension in every aspect of the need for understanding of the right strength gravitational magnetic field. When you set up your systems, when you create a field, like our Chinese scientists who say when they go into the room, Lisa reported, they call it a happy room. Measure that field immediately. What is the strength of gravitational magnetic field in that room? Then you understand this is the happiness, the strength of Magraph. Register it, hold it. In a space, you go through a depression, you go to a position that you miss home. You want to be with somebody, you want to have contact with. What do? You create the strength of the happiness of the Chinese in the lab. The man feels satisfied. The man feels happy. He's content. We had the report from a Canadian woman who slept, who was in a Maghreb system with Ali. The next day, her eyes was what they call like crying, and after that, she has got her sight back normal. These are not fairy tale, because the structure in that room is equal to the structure of the gravitational magnetic field of the vision nerve of the body of the man in the emotional part of the man, to recognize that it has adjusted itself to connect itself the correct way. So this is the promise of the prophet of the past. Every man will see. There shall be no blind. And we've seen the beginning of it. Build up your systems according to what I teach you. Build up your system understanding what you do. Man will never die of disease. It's impossibilities. This is how a short life of few hundred years become thousands of years. And as I said to Caroline recently, she says, what are we going to do all this time in a space? I said, you will not have enough time to do what you want to do. Do we need to sleep? Does the 8-hour situation is applicable to us in your space? Because we don't have any more sunlight. We don't see a sunrise and sunset every 24 hours. The minute we put our foot beyond the earth and beyond the plasma of this solar system, day and night becomes irrelevant. Religion becomes irrelevant because we see the true creation. Because when you see the reality, you see the falsehood. Do we need to stay in touch? Do we need to understand the totality? Or do we go across and understand the work of the smallest part of the human body within the central neural system of the brain, and voila, you can have everything. But at the same time, when you have this knowledge, you have to protect the body of the man from the fields which are in the space, from the fields which can mimic the strength of different entities in the body of the man, that it doesn't come to creation of new problems. If you don't understand it, you invite problems. If you understand it, you block problems. And this is where we are heading for. I encourage you to develop and test new technologies with your course, new strength fields, new horizon of understanding of the totality. In the teachings to the Innovation Center and to the Spaceship Center, I was explaining something in past few days, very short. And these are important if you are setting up in this direction. One of them, for example, is how you load up your reactor. Understand how you make your coils. What we did, we started with what I call the Iranian nuclear-based alpha source reactors, which was originally designed in Belgium, and then it was tested in Tehran. These are based on hydrogen and based on alpha radiation and beta radiation and the rest, which created inside the system. We didn't need to put sources in it. Then in a further development in the Sensano, we came across what we call the cores. We went from 22 centimeter to 1 and 2 centimeter cores, where we load up with GaNs and we walked away from nuclear materials. Then in the recent past, in the past few months, we came up with the coils. If you look in the coils, as we said, we created the plasma. Here we created the plasma. Here we created plasma. In one, we learn the energy of the universe manipulation. In one, we learn the rotation. And in one, we learned non-tangibility. And then if you put all this together and you understand it, you should be creating a very simple system, which is, in reality, is its own creation, where your coil, your operation of your ganses will lead to the creation of the hydrogen, which leads to creation of both gravitational and magnetic fields. But how do you do it? What is the next step to do it? How much of what strength in the emotion of the man is dependent on the structure of the brain, which is mainly to do with the nitrogen, oxygen, carbon and hydrogen, and partially to do with zinc. Due to gravitational magnetic field of the zinc being near to the physical partner side, which is copper, which again itself is connected to amino acid or Mr. Cohen. The interface and proximity of the strength between these two has connected the emotional part of the man to his physical part. And if you understand this, in the structure of the reactors you build, you have to come up with a newer structure for your reactors, which the coating which is devised can give you the interaction of the emotional part with the physical part. Where in creating the newer structure, you can have every single 1, 2, and 3 in it, that in the interaction you achieve this, that through your thoughts you can create physical motion on the physical structure of the body of the system. Where in reality you can expand the knowledge in how, by connecting to different elements, you decide which part of the physicality come into operation and how you control everyone through the interaction of your amino acids. Let's go deeper in this. We save it because we might come back to it. We call it emotion. Let's look at something new. Let's look at the different structure now that we've seen the interaction of the three. Let's go back to the coils. These are your coils you created. And nowadays we do it in two different ways. What is entailed in the coil? In the coil, what we do is nano technology, which itself is shaped by molecular structure. We allow the nanotechnology to be released to become a GANs, or what we call state of the plasma. This is how beautiful this technology is built on. Step by step, we have come through it over past 2-3 years. Now, you have the coil. Inside the coil, you have the copper. This is your molecular structure. This is your holding glue. Then you nano-coated it, you achieve your nanomaterial. Now, this is the loose bound. Then you create a condition to create GANs, which is your non-dimensional, and through it you brought the energy of the plasma out. So what does it mean? You use the copper to structure it. You created a nanomaterial to coat it. Then you put on top the GANs. So if you look inside, you have created your own core. But don't forget, it goes back to the hydrogen. It goes back to understanding of the creation of hydrogen, and you can control the source. So what does this mean? If for those of you who haven't understood, we can go a step further. This is, we take one loop of your loops. That's another loop up, that's another loop down. The black is your copper. Nano-coated. Inside it, there is a copper matter state which is irrelevant. On top of it, you have put the GaNs material. You can put another GaNs material on top of the GaNs material. You can put another layer of GaNs material if you like. So what happens now? If you create the right flow in the layers of nanomaterial, due to the interaction of the fields, you will create rotation in all layers. You don't need a motor. This is how rotation in the universe is created. And if you manage to choose the right ganses on different layers, you will end up with a plasma of the GaNs of hydrogen in the center. Or we call it a free fundamental plasma of what we call neutron. And then, if you understood this, and you can control your plasma strength, then would you like to see which part of the emotion of the man to be controlled through the interaction of the plasmas and by thoughts and not by physicality? Where this is the original, the Iranian nuclear reactors possibilities, where this comes with the core section which we did in the Sensano, and in so many ways now the structure of the core. Now you've seen how 2 years of teaching has brought man to the verge of breakthrough in the world of science of space. And if you interact it properly, if you construct it properly, every single one of these layers you can control, at least to start with. Let's see what it could be. If we choose the black one to be copper oxide, maybe we allow another layer of copper, CuO, to join us. Maybe we choose this to be CO2, and maybe choose the blue to be CH3. Look at the choice, understand the choice, just don't copy it. Look why we have chosen this element. Look. Understand why from the beginning we kept on emphasizing on the three elements of the gas. One is the casing, one is the separation of the material to do with the structure, and one is the energy supply. But if you look, they're all connected one way or another to each other. The structure stays solid, the motion stays under control, and with the physicality of the copper, at least for the time being, you can do whatever you like. You can create energies and release energies from this boundary of happiness, joy, reversing cancer, fear, even reproduction. Because all you need to do, you add a layer here which carries zinc. Then you have full control of the emotion of the man. Zinc oxide. Or you can put it there which is closer to the copper, but you still need that emotion link between the two. So now that you understood and you start understanding the total structure, it is important to understand why you've been doing it, how you've been doing things, and in so many ways brings order to 2 years of teaching. A number of you, if you go back, restructure the way you made your cores and coils and your original systems, and restructure yourself, restructure the materials you made, re-nano coat but do a perfect job, you're all ready to take off. The race is now who's going to be the first. The race now is who is going to open the space technology collectively as a team of scientists, individually can be achieved too, which a couple of people have achieved it. Learn from the structure of the planet Earth. The structure of this planet teaches you a lot. But as being so materialistic, we have not seen it. Understand why you have liquid some places and you have solid one places. Understand why you have gases while you have the liquid. Understand how the interaction of the plasmatic field from the center dictates the motion of the liquid and the solid. It's not random anymore. Because if you understood this, if you understand the totality, for example, exactly what the Earth does, on this side of your reactor, you can create banana. Physical banana. You see the physical Earth. This is where in the given condition, banana in certain condition, the strength field is created. While you can control this side and make yourself physical bread. If the planet has managed to create what you call the solid surface of it, and in that solid surface through a given interaction has created a banana, now you have the knowledge. Not all the parts of your plasma in the center of your coils and the cores which you have created has to be in the plasma state. You would like to have chips in certain point. You don't even need to fry it because you can create the emotion, the feeling and the texture of it without even producing the material. If you can create the energy which by frying certain temperature, creating molecular structure, gives you the emotion of feels. You all done it. You created the orange in the cup and you drank the cup and you say it tastes of orange. And Alex gets drunk with it from another thing. Is no difference. Now bring all the knowledge together.